What are some of the clearest signs of a scam? Let's find out. Starting with number 6. Old guy gets scammed by a girl he tried to help. Waitress Anissa Yeager scammed $100,000 from an 84-year-old widower. Donald Hodgins met Yeager and she worked as a waitress at a restaurant he always went to. Pretty soon, she was cleaning his house as a side hustle. Yeager told Hodgins that she had a terminal brain tumor, so he began helping her with money for car payments, student loans, and other bills she couldn't afford. She also asked for $30,000 for surgery on the tumor. Although Hodgins thought he was saving her life, Yeager didn't have a tumor. She took the money and had a nice vacation in Miami. What a great person. Like nearly everyone, Yeager had a lot of excuses for why she needed money, like telling Hodgins that she needed $500 for medicine for her sick mother. Hodgins didn't have a lot of family around him, but thankfully an acquaintance reported the situation to local law enforcement. The authorities froze Yeager's bank accounts and arrested her. Yeager's lawyer argued that Hodgins willingly gave Yeager gifts because he was attracted to her and made up the scam allegations when he found out she was in a relationship with another man. Which was probably at least somewhat true, but it's a hard argument to say that Hodgins made up her making up that she had a brain tumor. It sounds like this was a classic case of an older guy wanting to help a pretty young girl who used her looks and charm to scam money from him. Seniors are getting targeted more and more, so it's important to maintain connections with them. It's almost always friends and family that stop these scams from happening. Number 5. Way too good to be true. An Austin mom, known only as Katie, exposed a MacBook cheating husband scam where scammers offered to give away free laptops for a small shipping fee. Katie responded to a posting in a local buy-sell group on Facebook offering to give away a brand new MacBook. The poster claimed they bought the laptop as a gift for their husband but caught him cheating and wanted to get rid of it. Katie wanted the computer for her daughter and reached out immediately. The scammer told her that they had recently moved away from the Austin area but would still give Katie the laptop for free if she could cover the cost of shipping. Excited to get a free laptop, Katie agreed and sent $55 to the poster through Venmo. But when she asked for the tracking number, the scammer stopped responding. So Katie started to worry that the offer was too good to be true, but kept messaging the poster to see if the MacBook had shipped anyway. The poster eventually told her that it would be an additional $80 to send it overnight, and that she needed to cover insurance since they were unable to send the device without it. Katie luckily realized it was a scam and told the fraudster she was no longer interested, but the scammer urged her to send more money and called her repeatedly on Facebook Messenger. Katie searched MacBook cheating husband on Facebook and found hundreds of identical posts to the ones she saw. She reported the scam to the local group's administrator, reported dozens of other posts to Facebook, and alerted Venmo about the account the scammer was using to collect funds. The scam is clever because it might not seem like a big scam on its own, but it was clearly targeting thousands of people on a daily basis. It's effective because it's not too greedy, and good old Facebook told Katie that the posts didn't violate community standards and refused to take them down. Because, of course, right? So she reached out to CBS Austin to help her raise awareness for the scam. Katie was lucky she lost such a small amount, and her story is a reminder that if it's too good to be true, then it's too good to be true. Number 4. The Sting. An 81-year-old grandfather from New Zealand, who didn't wish to be named, lost his life savings after scammers targeted his bank account. It started with a phone call from someone claiming to be a police officer. They told the grandfather that they were working on a sting and wanted to transfer money into his account as part of it. He agreed to help and followed their instructions on who to send the cash to. So the victim actually went inside his bank to transfer $40,000 to an offshore account that he'd never used before. His request should have raised some red flags for the teller processing the transaction, but of course, the bank couldn't be bothered. So he successfully transferred the money and never saw it again. The money was supposed to be for his son and granddaughter, and he was determined to recover the money. So the grandfather made a series of impassioned phone calls to multiple banks in an effort to make them review their practices. The bank claimed its staff showed the man materials on how to spot scams and asked him questions to confirm that he was transferring his funds to a secure account. Which is just such nonsense, isn't it? Well, we gave him a pamphlet. What else do you want? Obviously, the 81-year-old man thinking he's helping the police is to blame. Victim advocates stood up for him and called for financial institutions to implement stricter security measures. Scammers often groom their victims, and banks intervening with potential devastating transactions could save people tens of thousands of dollars. The organization, Consumer New Zealand, acknowledged that the country's banking system was behind on security and pointed out that there was an increase in scams. Sadly, the grandfather still hasn't recovered the money he lost. Anytime a government agency asks you to transfer money to help out an investigation, it's a scam. The government has enough of your money already. They don't need more to bust the bad guys. Number 3, tech support. A fake tech support guy stole almost $50,000 from a retiree who kept his bank account numbers and passwords in his computer. Chiam Hock Leong wanted to take a break from his computer to go for a walk with his wife when his computer crashed, but his computer suddenly went blank. A bunch of words started flashing across the screen, and a voice came through the speakers telling him someone was trying to hack into his accounts and urged him to call Microsoft. If you're not too comfortable with technology, of course, this would scare the crap out of you. So Leong panicked and called the number provided. A man named Sean, who had a heavy Indian accent, answered the call and explained that this was the reason people pay so much for the software. It told them when someone was hacking their computer. Sean said that he was there to help stop this person from stealing Leong's personal information. So Leong followed Sean's instructions, including entering his email, password, and turning off his cell phone so that the scammer would be unable to access it. The call lasted 2 to 3 hours. Sean and Leong talked for a while and shared personal details such as Leong's father being injured in the army and his family moving to the United States, where they opened a convenience store. While he was on the phone, Leong's wife was cooking in the background. He wanted to hang up so he could eat, so Sean told him to leave his PC on overnight as the problem was too big to be solved over just a few hours. But Leong's gut told him to turn on his cell phone, even though Sean told him to keep it off. When he did, he got a list of notifications from his bank telling him about multiple transactions that had occurred while he was talking to Sean. Someone had siphoned tons of money from his account, so the retiree turned off his computer and contacted the bank. He filed a police report and froze his bank accounts. The police discovered that the money was transferred into the accounts of Anil Tripathi, who was arrested. Tripathi, who was a permanent resident in Singapore, said he thought a well-wisher had given him the money and redistributed it among his bank accounts, sending $10,000 to his home country of India. You know how that goes, right? All those anonymous well-wishers just sending you piles of cash constantly? It's a tale as old as time. The prosecution argued that if Tripathi thought someone had given him the money out of generosity, he should have at least verified the source of the transfers. Although prosecutors said there was no evidence connecting Tripathi to the scam, it should have been treated like finding a wallet on the ground and spending the money inside of it. Basically, if he was claiming he just kind of found the money, it still wasn't his money to spend. At the time that the transfers happened, Tripathi only had $50 in his 2 bank accounts. When prosecutors asked him why the funds entered his accounts, he claimed to have no idea. It's pretty hard to believe that he knew nothing when he immediately spent some of the money instead of reporting it to law enforcement. Tripathi also said he was willing to return the money to Chiam, although he would have to pay restitution on the $10,000 that he sent back to his family. If Tripathi is found guilty of dishonest misappropriation, he faces up to 2 years in jail and a hefty fine. It seems like if Tripathi wasn't Sean on the phone, he definitely knew who the scammer is and was playing dumb. Whenever you get unexpected emails, texts, or messages claiming something is wrong and to call this number, never call it. If you need to verify your concerns, always get the number yourself. Number 2, the classic third person. This story involves a Singaporean retiree who lost her life savings to a fake Facebook friend. A man named Alvin sent a woman, known as Madame Tan, a friend request on Facebook. According to his profile, Alvin was a Singaporean chief executive of an interior design firm in London and was in the process of completing a hotel, which would be his last project before retiring. After the two exchanged messages, Alvin asked Tan to help him get his hands on some materials from companies in China. He was referred to a specific company, but since he didn't speak Mandarin, he hoped she would act as an intermediary. Madame Tan was skeptical of Alvin until he transferred money into her account for the cost of the materials. He also showed her transfer statements from his British bank account, Barclays, which reassured her that she could trust him. Alvin had her make a list of transfers and sent her transfer statements to confirm the transactions. But the statements were fake. Madame Tan thought it would take a few days for Alvin's deposit into her account to clear. Then he told her she needed to keep making payments for additional fees like shipping shipping and taxes. So she made 22 transfers of $20,000 each. Tan borrowed money from her son and took out a loan to make the final transaction of $50,000. Weeks after her first transfer, Madame Tan received a phone call from a Malaysian number that told her that Alvin had been detained at the airport for having too much cash on him. He needed her to pay $98,000 to release him from police custody. Her son was already suspicious of the transactions she was making, and before Madame Tan could approach her daughter for a loan, he intercepted and told her she was being scammed. Madame Tan attempted to confront the scammers, but they cut off all communication with her. She had 3 numbers for Alvin, 2 of which didn't answer the phone, and the third was a WhatsApp account that was no longer linked to the app. Her children helped her file 2 police reports and write letters to the accounts that she sent the money to. In 15 days, Madame Tan lost $1 million that she likely won't be getting back. Although there are situations where someone needs help making transfers due to every country having different banking systems, the only people who should ever do this would be people you know personally and have known for a long time. You can never be too cautious when it comes to your finances. If you're enjoying this video, be sure to stay tuned right here for our past release about the scams the mob loves to run. Number 1. The online-only friend. An unknown caller convinced an elderly woman known only as Emily to send them $10,000 through the mail. The caller spent weeks earning Emily's trust in what seems like a bit of a romance scam before convincing her to withdraw the money from her bank account and follow some pretty specific instructions. The caller had her go to the bank and withdraw the cash and to explain to the tellers that it was for her family. Then they had her stuff the bills into clothing items, tuck them into a box with random household objects on top, and write "Happy Birthday" on the side of the box, which isn't suspicious at all. The caller insisted that she say that the gifts were for family when she dropped it off at the post office. Emily followed the instructions and separated $4,000 into 2 boxes, one that she sent to New York and the other to New Mexico. The caller pressed Emily for her Visa card number as they wanted to withdraw an additional $5,000. Emily's close friend Wanda found out about the situation and rushed to Emily's home. Emily insisted that she needed to go to the bank to get the money, but Wanda wouldn't let her leave. She saw what was going on, so they called the local sheriff's department, who helped the 2 women lock Emily's Visa card before any money could be withdrawn and stop the 2 packages from reaching their destinations. Emily admitted that she was willing to take out a loan to help out the caller who wanted to travel to meet her. The police told her that if the caller did try to meet her in person, to immediately call 911. They also recommended that she ignore phone calls if she didn't recognize the number. Luckily, Emily got all of her money back thanks to Wanda's help. Sadly, many seniors don't have a Wanda watching their backs and making sure everything is okay. So please, help keep an eye on your elderly loved ones. Family or not, they deserve your protection, especially when it comes to shady financial transactions. What are some of the scams that are done by the mafia? Let's get right into it. Number 3, the world's worst gambler. MGM Grand, a casino based in Detroit, was declared not responsible for a gambler losing up to $6 million in investor funds at its tables. Gino Acatola, the gambler in question, was treated like royalty when he gambled at the MGM Grand. The casino extended extra lines of credit to him and gave him discounted rooms and even free meals. All of this made Acatola so comfortable that he went on to gamble away around $6 million. But the casino didn't just give him discounted rooms and extra lines of credit. They also waived the right to do a background check on Acatola. If they had, the MGM may have discovered that Acatola was gambling with investors' funds. They may have realized that Acatola had no other employment, no other sources of income, and was living large off the dime of others. They also may have discovered his criminal history involving identity theft and grand larceny. But since the MGM was both greedy and lazy, Acatola had everything he needed to lose millions. Before Acatola got into gambling away investors' funds, he was involved in petty crime, even having a stint in prison in the 1990s. His more recent criminal involvement was in 2013 when he pled guilty in a Macomb County court to fraud-related offenses, getting a 10-month suspended sentence for his efforts. But that didn't teach Acatola a lesson. Instead, he continued to commit all sorts of crimes. He eventually met his Waterloo when he got carried away and gambled all of his investors' funds. You might be wondering how Akintola got these investments in the first place. Well, Akintola was a skilled salesman who could convince many people to loan him money for his business. He promised abnormally high short-term returns and claimed the money invested would go into commercial construction projects in Michigan and Florida. But Akintola was lying. A lot of these projects didn't exist, and what he was actually doing was an elaborate ruse. To perpetuate his lies, he provided his would-be investors with fraudulent emails, contracts, and payout schedules concerning the projects. In the end, he was able to source around $6 million from investors. Our con man didn't just try his hands at defrauding investors. He also tried to defraud his friends too. Akintola owned about 5 tanning salons in Miami. His companies used Interlink, a middleman payment gateway, to process payments. He convinced his friend, who was the owner of Interlink, to raise the limit for his processing credit card refunds for an allegedly defective tanning product. This meant that Interlink would process refunds for that product, and the tanning locations would reimburse Interlink. However, the tanning businesses never repaid Interlink, and Akintola managed to scam them for about $200,000. Now that Akintola had all of this money he'd swindled, he had enough cash to spend on what he loved doing, which of course was gambling with someone else's money. Akintola's casino of choice was MGM Grand Detroit, where they treated him like complete royalty. Surprisingly, Akintola was an extremely bad blackjack player. One would expect a fraudster to be better at gambling, but Akintola was a complete exception to that rule. He lost money all day long, and MGM Grand encouraged him to continue playing. The casino gave him everything he needed: lines of credit, discounted rooms and meals, and whatever else to make him happy despite losing money. As his losses began to mount and MGM Grand continued to extend his credit, it reached a threshold where the casino was given permission to access to his background data. Because they extended him a long line of credit, they could legally check his background and see whether he was worthy of loaning to. But the MGM Grand did not check, and as such, didn't realize that he was gambling investors' funds away. Since Akintola was the worst gambler on the planet, MGM Casino might have had every reason not to check his background. One might even say they had every incentive to make sure he continued playing for as long as he could. In any case, Akintola was eventually arrested and charged in court for his crimes. But this didn't mark the end of his crime saga. Despite being found guilty, Akintola managed to convince the judge to sentence him to only a year in jail if he agreed to pay back a large portion of his loot. The proposed 1-year sentence was below the 6-year sentencing guidelines that the judge ought to have followed. So instead, the judge offered a reduced sentence if Akintola repaid $50,000, but Akintola couldn't even find money for that. The judge eventually just gave Akintola the 7-year sentence that was in the sentencing guidelines anyway. While his victims understood that Akintola's incarceration meant they would never see their money again, they were also glad that he was paying for his crimes. Was our con man ever remorseful? Not really. While he gave a short apology in court, his victim said he hadn't shown an ounce of remorse for his actions. Number 2. From Russia without love. Alex Gallant was an auto broker who used straw buyers to falsify financing applications and defraud local car dealers. Gallant's scheme was to obtain money from investors and financial institutions through false pretenses and then use the money however he wanted. Gallant took money from at least 40 victims, claiming that their money would be used to purchase and export luxury vehicles to China. Gallant also secured financing from financial institutions using fraudulent documents and straw borrowers who were working for Gallant's scheme behind the scenes. And he did all of this while on the run from the United States government and the Russian mob. If Gallant wasn't such a horrible fraudster, one might have been impressed by his ability to get on the bad side of the mafia and the law at the same time. He found himself in a situation where he could either accept up to 50 years of jail time with the US government or a nasty fate with the Russian mob. Which path did he take? Let's find out. Gallant was a man of many scams and schemes who loved to run his fraud through multiple channels so that he would have multiple fault lines. Gallant created a business called Timeless Auto Group to set up his scheme to recruit straw borrowers from around the country. These straw borrowers would visit dealerships that sold luxury cars like Range Rovers, Maseratis, Mercedes-Benz GLS 450s, and 550s. These dealerships would end up selling the luxury vehicles, and the straw borrowers would agree agree to a 6-year financing agreement with them. This agreement was usually brokered by a company called Ally Financial. The borrowers would turn the vehicle over to Gallant, who would have them shipped to buyers outside the country within a month. When Ally Financial discovered the scam, it had lost over $300,000 to Gallant's fraud. Here's where things get a little dicey. Ally Financial took the case to court, and it ended up being dismissed for unclear reasons. Aside from his straw buying operation, Gallant also managed to convince over 40 victims to invest in Timeless Auto Group. Unfortunately for those investors, Gallant didn't use the money to purchase vehicles. Instead, he turned the operation into an elaborate Ponzi scheme and used the money to support a lavish lifestyle. Gallant flew all over the country in private jets to engage in high-stakes betting at exclusive casinos. He also lived in a house he rented for $10,000 per month and paid professional gamblers to play for him, and then used whatever was left over of investors' funds to settle gambling debts that he had accumulated. This wasn't Gallant's first rodeo either. He had been previously convicted of fraud in a similar auto brokering scheme in New York, but Gallant wasn't sentenced for it until he helped the FBI make a racketeering case against 2 members of the Russian mafia. After testifying against them, he was sentenced to 3 years of supervised release. And it was under this supervised release period that he started this new straw borrower slash Ponzi scheme slash all-around fraud guy act. When he realized that the feds were on his tail during his supervised release, he fled. But Gallant couldn't remain on the lam, as the long arm of the law eventually caught up with him. His trial was conducted, and the court sentenced him to 126 months in jail. Number 1. Punishing sinners? Zane Kaiser blackmailed thousands of, let's call them, adult film purveyors worldwide out of about £4 million. At the time Zane got sentenced, he was the most prolific cyber criminal to be sentenced in the United Kingdom. According to the court, Zane's crimes were so extensive that the criminal justice system had simply never seen anything like it. Zane was just recently sentenced, but he was arrested for his crimes about 5 years ago. However, due to the complexity of the investigation and mental health concerns, his trial has been delayed. So how did Zane manage to scam all these investors to these sites? Let's just say he had some help. Zane first started in cybercrime journey by making money off ransomware attacks, viruses that freeze up the victim's computer until a ransom was paid. After a while, Zane became bold. He contacted the Russian controller of an extremely potent cyber attack tool with the promise that he would split his profits with them if his planned mass blackmail operation was successful. To further cement his operation, he also forged connections with Chinese and American cybercriminals who could help him move the cash without it leading back to him. Once he was done with those preparations, the operation itself began. Zane bought advertising space on sites and put malicious links on the ads. The links were set up so that people who clicked on them would immediately download some malware named Angler. If the victim's laptop didn't have great antivirus systems in place, Angler would deliver a virus to the computer that would seize the entire system. Once control was established, the malware would display a notice that told the victim that the FBI had seized the computer. The message said that the seizure was in light of the user's crimes watching these videos. In the same message, the user would be informed that if they didn't pay around a £100 fine, they would be charged to court and could be imprisoned for up to 3 years. This was usually enough motivation for most users to pay the purported fee. The companies that Zane purchased these ads from were wholly unaware of his nefarious actions. The scam was extremely successful, and Zane made a lot of money. Law enforcement officials still aren't sure of just how Zane made, but managed a rough estimate of at least $4 billion. And what did Zane spend the money on? Well, he called himself the King, if that's any indication. He spent the bulk of his cash on high-end hotels, women, gambling, drugs, and a £5,000 Rolex watch. Most of his victims simply paid the ransom. Rather than going to the police, getting malware from an adult site isn't something most people want to admit. But how was Zane finally caught if the victims never went to the police? The simple truth is that Zane had too strong of a hand. After he'd been at his business for a while, one of the advertising companies he bought ad space off discovered that he was a cyber criminal. When the company confronted him, Zane antagonized them by threatening to harm the company's employees. Not to be intimidated, one of the ad companies reported to the police, in a rare case where the ad company was actually the hero. And that was when Zane's goose was cooked. The NCA got on his trail and worked with partners in the US, Canada, Europe, and the Crown Prosecution Service to track him down and arrest arrest him. He was hit with 11 charges, including blackmail, fraud, computer offenses, and possessing criminal property. At first, Zane pled not guilty, but he eventually switched his plea and was sentenced to 6 years in jail. He was also ordered to pay back around £270,000 in restitution. Click to watch one of these next videos. Let us know in the comment section which technology you think poses a bigger risk: a self-driving car or a smart lock installed on your front door.